Sorry about that. And so welcome everybody to our talk this evening on living a life in balance and flow. So we have with us Judi Rich from our Calgary Centre in Canada. She takes care of the centre there in Canada. And by profession, she's a fitness instructor and a graphic designer, both. And so just a couple of things to share. So first of all, the mics are muted and the video is muted because we're recording. We are live streaming on Facebook. And so if you'd like to catch that later, more than welcome to do so. And finally, please do send any questions you may have. You can put them in the chat and then Judi can respond to them after the talk and the meditation that we have at the end. And if you send the questions to the host, that would be helpful. Okay, so it's over to Judi. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Angela, and a very warm greeting to all of you. I believe it's the evening there for many of you. Over here in Canada, we're still in midday, but I think in Zoom, it's a completely different time zone. So it's very lovely to be with all of you. And if it's okay, just to start the session, we're going to take just a minute or two to really arrive mentally into the space. I know you're physically here, but maybe just a minute or two to arrive mentally, which is very connected actually to the topic. So I'm going to invite you to check that you're comfortably seated. I hope so. And maybe just a moment to slow things down. And taking a breath or two can help a lot towards that end. So just taking a gentle, natural breath in. And the magic is always on the release of the air from the lungs. That slow exhale really seems to slow things down. Maybe another breath in. And again, that slow exhale can help the body to release any hidden tension and also help the mind to feel it's arrived in the space. And then letting the breath continue naturally on its own, which it will. I start to move my focus from the breath to that place behind the eyes, being very aware that I am here, observing through the eyes, listening through the ears, very present, as if the world outside is on pause. And I'm going to give my full attention to the care of the self in this moment. And to our topic, this idea of maintaining balance and flow really in day-to-day life. I have to say, I love these kinds of topics. They're really aligned with what has been my focus for my spiritual journey. And that's about integration. We definitely can have very beautiful experiences, spiritual experiences, peaceful experiences when we're in meditation spaces such as inner space or temples, forests, really sacred spaces. We can have a wonderful experience. But what always really interested me was how to sustain, hold that feeling as I come into day-to-day life, integration, to be able to live spiritually, for life to become a sacred art rather than just going through all these motions, and in essence, to become a human being rather than just a human doing. And that seemed to be a focus for my entire life, even before really formally starting this spiritual study in the 1990s. It always seemed to be the case that from very young, our parents enrolled us in lots of activities. Some of you might also be in the same situation. They kept us very physically busy. Dance was the main focus, but all these sports and different things going on. We were always very busy, active, full lives. And that was wonderful, but I started to notice, especially when I was doing something where I might feel a little bit nervous or anxious if I was about to go into a dance performance on stage or run a race in track and field, and I was feeling a little bit nervous. My instinct was to become very still inside. I don't know what that was about, because I would look around and see everyone else was, very active and expressive and warming up and shaking. But I would become more and more still inside. And somehow that seemed to support me being able to operate as best as I could at my highest potential as I came into activity. And then I came into spirituality, and it all started to make sense what that was about. So for me, a huge part of balance, flow, grace, ease, dignity, as I come into activity, is being able to marry that stillness, that beautiful inner experience with outward expression. And there has been so much opportunity to explore and practice this in a very concrete way because of being involved in dance and fitness. It's been a wonderful arena to practice and explore what this integration looks like. In fact, I would say dance is a wonderful symbol for this topic. I want you to bring into your mind the image of that beautiful dancer in pointe shoes and a tutu on the stage, gracefully moving around, doing all these activities, these different movements. And what I noticed and would hear souls say very often as they observe the dancer is always this, wow, they make it look so easy. They just seem to be floating and flowing. It just looks so easy. They seem to be defying gravity. This idea of this ease with which the dancer moves. Sometimes people compare it to the swan on the water, just gliding along, making it look so effortless. And if you went underwater, you would actually start to recognize the amount of power required. So this is the case with the ballet dancer. I don't know how many times, sometimes I was teased because souls would almost dismiss ballet dance because it looks so easy. It's just nothing. And I've heard dancers who, one was sharing a story. It was while she was in high school. She went to a high school that her brother also attended. And it was a high school for, gifted students. She was ballet, he was hockey. I'm from Canada. Hockey is big in Canada. So he was in hockey, she was in ballet. And they were at the same school. And he would get exemptions, be able to be excused from gym class because he was involved in hockey, and this is such an arduous athletic endeavor. He's already getting enough athletics from his hockey, so he was excused from gym class. When his sister, the ballet dancer, applied as well, she was refused because they were told that ballet was not athletic. And so it's such a concept, it's such a strong concept because it looks so easy, that many feel it's not athletic at all and don't really recognize the amount of strength and power it takes to have that kind of graceful, controlled movement. To move with that level of dignity on the stage takes tremendous inner power and strength, physically speaking. And so that really, to me, is the essence, not just of ballet, but of day-to-day life, that there's a need to develop this inner stillness, strength, and power that really can support, really confronting challenges, or just that juggling act that was shown in the image at the beginning of the program. I was actually smiling because that's often how my life feels, is I'm juggling these balls, and then life will throw another ball, see if I can juggle that one in. Am I going to be dropping balls? It always feels like this. And as I say, it's been that way for as long as I can remember. And my saving grace has been spirituality, developing that inner core. And I remember when I first came into the spiritual study, there was a saying that I came across, and I read it and I felt that is it. That's what I dedicate my entire spiritual life to. And the saying was this idea of learning to balance silence and activity. So if I learn to balance silence and activity, there will be power, benefit. Learning to balance that silence with activity. We very often separate them. So people's lives become so busy as they perceive it that they say, I don't have time for spirituality. Whereas I have found the only way I can maintain sanity in a busy life is with spirituality, is by living spiritually, is by nurturing that inner strength and core. So there is that flow and grace and ease in really managing all of those different activities, just like the ballet dancer on the stage. By having that inner strength, that core, she's able to do all of those quite complex movements with such grace and ease. Everyone thinks that they're doing nothing out there, that I can do ballet, but it's such an easy and simple endeavor. It's deceptive, really, because as I say, it takes incredible strength. There's something that we do when we're training clients around this idea, especially when it involves balance and flow, or what we call in movement, controlled movement flow. Whenever those are involved, control, movement, and balance, we've noticed that there's a particular cue that is most powerful. So even yesterday, we had a client doing what's called elephant on a ball. Some of you might be familiar with this. So you have this large fitness ball, and the idea is just like the elephant in the circus, they're going to get all four limbs balancing on that ball. So their knees and hands on the ball, feet off the floor, and they're completely balanced on this round object. And there's a reason we do this other than it's, kind of fun to try, is it's building the core. On a side note, that's really the best way to build core, is put one on an unstable surface. I mention that because it applies to life too. One of the best ways to build inner resilience is through uncertain or unstable situation. So they're doing this elephant on the ball, and you can see they're struggling and they're getting really anxious and making noises and shaking more, and it's getting worse and worse. And they say, can you give me some hints, some techniques, some mechanical? And we try a few things, but it's always this cue that works the best. We say, you know what? Pretend you're meditating. Become very quiet and still inside. Because they're doing the exact opposite thing. They're getting more and more anxious. Just become very quiet and still inside. Some of them have never meditated in their life. That's not the point. Everyone knows what that feels like, to become still. And that's what they start to do. And suddenly, they're balancing on the ball with considerable dignity as well. So again, this theme of that integration between that inner stillness and movement. Sometimes this has been described as being very present in the moment, because the stillness isn't just a kinesthetic or physical stillness. It's obviously a mental one as well. That's probably most important. And what creates all the noise and upheaval and freneticism mentally are a few different things that we'll explore. It really comes down to three. But what we want to do is mentally have that stability, stillness, which is often described as being present in day-to-day vernacular. That my mind isn't pulled, my attention isn't pulled into the past or the future, like squirrel, that I'm over here, that I'm very present, very present. And that presence, again, supports being able to do what I'm doing in this moment, even though there might be a queue of many things I'm supposed to do. Can I do this particular activity successfully before integrating into the next one? So be that stillness, that presence, although there might be a lot happening in this particular moment with this particular act, I'm bringing that inner core to the moment. So super important to be able to develop that inner stillness. There's a lot that can pull us off. And the other day I was driving, and there's a clothing shop along the route I often drive on every day. And it puts these nice sayings on the sign outside. It's got a little electronic board that flashes nice uplifting sayings. And one of them was, what everyone in the world wants is love, connection, and purpose. Love, connection, and purpose. And I was really reflecting, they identify these three things. I thought, that's quite true. It is the three things. All of our activity is motivated by this: love, connection, and purpose. So there are these three things that if they're not in a healthy place, it's very difficult to come into that stillness that will support a life of balance and flow. If these three things are not being satisfied, I will mentally be all over the place, easily influenced, very reactive, easily overcome because of the pull of searching for these three things. We call these three dots in the spiritual practice of Raj Yoga, but they're really what I focus on. And just as in a physical fitness class, we want to build that core, that physical core strength, so I can move with the balance and flow like the dancer. Spiritually, we're doing the exact same thing. We're developing that spiritual core strength, spiritual alignment, which is going to support balance and flow in day-to-day life, no matter how challenging the moment, the situation, the activity is, it's amazing when you have that inner core strength, spiritual core and alignment, what we are capable of. So what are those three things that we need to strengthen at the core? And what do they have to do with this idea of love, connection, or belonging, and purpose? The first one, obviously, is a sense of self. And actually, this is the love piece of the self-love. This really good sense of self or self-respect. It is amazing how much easier it is to move through life with dignity when one has that self-respect. And that's just one of the three. That alone makes a huge difference. I see it all the time in movement. Those who have that self-confidence, they move physically in a different way. Those who have that inner spiritual self-respect, that first point, they move, they address challenges in a very different way, so much dignity. And so how do I cultivate that inner self-respect, that spiritual alignment, which is the real core to me, spiritual core? And this is what a robust spiritual study looks at, first and foremost, this sense of who am I? And it's such a powerful question. We really can dedicate our whole life to it. It is the most important question, you know. Before a human doing, I'm a human being. That sense of my own being. If I don't have it, I will be just a human doing, and I will be easily overwhelmed by all the doing I have to do. If I'm a being, I'm okay if the doing doesn't work out. So getting that really strong sense of self intact in the spiritual practice, the way we answer the question, who am I? I am spirit. I am a soul. That's the essence of a spiritual practice. I'm a spiritual being. And it's such a beautiful journey to unpack what that actually means. To say, I am a soul, I am a spiritual being. I know that in this life, I was born into a very eclectic situation, which you might physically have figured out. So it was a very eclectic household. It was one parent was of one culture and the other parent was of another culture. There were two different religions they came from. One was very athletic and artistic. The other was very academic. I mean, it was such a mix in every possible way. I used to joke, my parents are as different as black and white. They were physically that color, but they also were very different in so many ways. And so I remember this was always such an attractive question to me. Who am I? Because people would try to put me into boxes. You know, are you Jewish? What are you? And I never really was identifying with any of the boxes. None of them. It was really quite a cause of concern. I was always asking, who am I? Because we live in a world where we love to put people in boxes, based usually on physical features, physical aspects, even gender, everything. Yes, with gender, we try to come up with other labels, but they're still boxes. We can't seem to get away from these boxes. But when I heard, you are a soul, it was like instant recognition. Ah, yes, I recognize. Yes, that really captures this feeling that I'm inside of here, and it's really only qualities, character, that can describe who I am. Nothing physical can really capture who I am. This feeling of the self, that I am this constellation of qualities and capacities and character. That makes sense. So I was so attracted to this sense of knowing more and more, experiencing more and more the spiritual identity. It felt so right, not just for myself, but how I viewed other people as well. To really see who people are beneath the skin was so powerful for me and so respectful. This is the beginning of developing that very strong core. So much of our activity and why it drives us crazy and we feel overwhelmed, so much is about trying to get that validation through our activities. Create that self-respect from what we do. And so people keep throwing balls at us. We say, I've got to do this well. I've got to do this well. My self-respect depends on it. And it begins to feel overwhelming, absolutely crushing. But if I already have self-respect, independent of the activity, then I'm much more free. If I get it done, great. If I don't, it's okay. I remember there was one day, there were multiple projects, multiple. It was insane because there was professional work at that time. I was in communications at the local YMCA, and they had so many projects on the go, massive projects. And there was also a lot going on with the spiritual organization, the Brahma Kumaris. So I remember there was so many things that were due in terms of graphic design. I was lying in bed one day and I was doing the calculation, saying, well, that one takes, even if I work at the speed of light, that's going to take that many hours. And then that project would, and I realized there literally was not enough time. There physically was not enough time to get everything done. And so then you could feel this anxiety growing. I'm not going to get it done. And then there came a moment where I said, and if you don't, what will happen? If you, I mean, you'll give it your best, of course, but if you don't get it done, what will happen? And the answer was, well, people might be kind of upset with me and not like me and be angry with me. But, okay, let me get it straight. That's the worst thing that's going to happen. It's not like you're going to explode or something, right? That they're just not, they might be a little bit upset. I mean, you'll obviously do your best and you'll communicate to them the situation, but they might think less of you. Is that the worst thing that's going to happen here? I said, yeah, that is the worst thing that would happen, is they'll just think less of me. But I don't think less of me. The self-respect has to be intact. Now, it was quite interesting what happened once I let go of trying to get value through completing those projects. In case it's a cliffhanger for you, the projects did get completed, but in such a peaceful and easy way, because I'm very lucky. I get to do things I love to do so much, I don't even call it work. I would do it for free. I love doing graphic design. It's like I'm coloring all day. Who would not love that? It's wonderful. And I love doing fitness. I'm playing all day. It's ridiculous that I get paid for it. I love what I do. And so it's such a pleasure when I'm free of the pressure that lack of self-respect can often impose. When there is not that self-respect, the doing becomes so pressured because our value depends on getting the act done. But when I'm free of trying to fulfill the self-respect through the activity, there's just love. That first one, love. My activity is all motivated by love. I'm not doing it because I need, just as I would do it for free, I'm in a sense doing it for free. I don't need a return. I don't need the validation. I'm completely motivated by loving what I do. And so I'm in the moment, giving it my absolute best. How incredible that things become more efficient when I'm not feeling the pressure of seeking my value through the activity. That's the first dot. The second, connected, belonging. This is, again, such an obstruction, creates such heaviness in our activity. And I certainly felt this in dance, in school. We never seem to outgrow it. It seems to continue for many of us into our adult life. And it is, again, an aspect of wanting to be valued, that sense of, I need to do this to belong to this group or this activity or this idea or this ideology. I need to do this to belong. Puts incredible pressure on the soul. In this particular spiritual practice, we develop this sense of belonging with the one we refer to as God, really trying to align. And to me, it's knowing what your core values are and aligning with that really resonates with your core values. When I first came to this study, I was told you're a soul, and developing this connection with the Supreme Soul was very essential to restoring that personal dignity. And it all sounded wonderful. And I said, okay. But there was also some very interesting inner resistance that was coming up as I was going along that made it very exciting. And there was one day I had a reflection. I said, let's pretend the Brahma Kumaris don't exist, and God doesn't exist. And then what is most important to you in life? What are your core values? What do you feel is essential to quality of life? Without it, I don't know what the point is. And it was to really, again, this dignity, this respect, this highest potential, this sacredness, this pure feeling, clean heart. So, it was just at the tip of my tongue. I knew exactly what those core values. And I said, okay, let's bring in the Brahma Kumaris. Let's bring back God. Do they align, agree with your core values? Is this what you want to belong to? I was like, yes, they're aligning. That sense of belonging, that which supports the best in me. This is how I think of God, the being who exists to cultivate, nourish, and nurture the best in me. This is really important because as I feel quite, overwhelmed perhaps by all these different scenarios, and sometimes it's life and death situations, it can feel a tremendous weight, that responsibility. And then I think about this relationship with God. I bring that connection into the situation. It's as if the weight is removed and I can function much more easily. It's quite interesting in fitness. There's a principle to movement that is the opposite of what we think. And I see it over and over and over again. And that we feel, it was popularized by Jane Fonda, no pain, no gain. We feel that it has to get really intense and extreme, and I have to gird and fight and struggle for there to be results. This is a very deep attitude that people have, and often frighten people from walking into the gym. It's really deep. And the irony is that it's actually through letting go that the capacities of the body is activated. It's really difficult to get that through to people. They just keep girding and struggling and fighting. And yes, I want to develop strength and power and proficiency, but the method through which I'm going to reach that might be the opposite of what I'm doing. This is what the connection to God teaches me, is I'll be in a situation and maybe you've got to try harder, you've got to work harder, and then I remember this connection, this relationship with this beautiful divine being who's my number one fan, really. It's as if I surrender everything to that being. They're saying, let go, let go. Just be with me. It's such a pleasant experience. The moment I do let go, the natural capacities of the soul are unlocked. It's a really strange kind of antithetical thinking that it's this effort, what does it really mean? And we often say in class that one of the most difficult things for souls to do, efforts, is let go. And this is what the connection to that being enables me to do. I take hold of that beautiful relationship to let go of what's actually limiting me. So that connection is very important. The third one is purpose. This is huge. We all want purposeful lives. And some of you might be in this category or connected to this category. I am at a point where I'm also a caregiver for my parents, so they're of that generation. So I spend a lot of time with elderly people, a lot of time. And in this culture, we have sometimes an attitude which may not be that healthy. There was a fellow student who was a journalist, and she did a study of centenarians, those who live to 100 years old or more. And what are the factors in their life that make that possible? And there were quite a few: healthy diet, but very high on the list was sense of purpose, that these souls who lived and where there was a high concentration of centenarians, they were viewed in a very valued way in the culture. They were given a sense of purpose as elders. So they were the holders of wisdom, the oral tradition for that culture, and they were connected with all generations with that duty, that intention, that purpose, to be able to share that wisdom with the next generation. So they had a very purposeful role in the culture. Purpose is huge as a motivator. Why am I doing this? And to feel that sense. And when we say purpose, it turns out the heart of the human soul flourishes, is very healthy, clean, when it gets to experience benevolence, generosity, when we get to engage in those kinds of acts, to be generous, to be benevolent, to be kind, to be forgiving. These are actually very healthy. Now, I get to experience this a lot because when I tell people I teach fitness, they always think it's hatha yoga or something. And I always shock and say, no, it's boot camp. I teach boot camp, which means you're yelling at people a lot. But my purpose always feels not to crush them or kill them, but to draw out their highest potential. And I don't even mean physically, just as human beings, their belief in themselves, that sense of will. These are things that they're going to carry into other aspects of their life. So I always like to encourage them to do their best, but from a very loving place. It is confusing for them because they say, you're yelling at me, but you're doing it in such a nice way. I want to try to do what you're asking. So it becomes quite entertaining. But that sense of moving through life, motivated by that purpose, that intention to uplift, to be kind, to be patient, to forgive, to be generous. It's amazing how much energy this gives us because our heart is operating so well. When we become petty and small and unforgiving and impatient and irritated, the smallest activity seems overwhelming. So engaging in this, always bringing that focus back to that reset, doing it from that place of love and care. And if I'm not able to do it at that moment, it's okay to step back, take care of the self, so my heart can enlarge, can open up, and move with that kind of purpose. So these three aspects, that self-respect, a connection which keeps me very, very light, letting go, and to be motivated by care and love. These develop our spiritual core. And it's amazing how much we're able to do without losing our sense of being, our sanity. So I'm going to pause here. Time has flown by. And let's see if we can just take a moment of reflection to start to wake up that spiritual core activated and feel it, that beautiful stillness that's very rich with love, connection, and purpose. So again, hopefully you're seated comfortably still. And we always suggest, for the sake of integration into my day-to-day life, to experiment with eyes comfortably open, if that's possible, while reflecting, while thinking. And again, if you want to take that breath to help the body, to release any tension, feel free to take a breath in. And that slow exhale that helps the body to settle, relax, while still alert. And since my attention's already there, I'm going to observe the breath of the body for a moment. It's quite a wonder. The body breathing as if it's on its own, no conscious input from me. I allow my mind to follow the rhythm of the breath. That very natural inhale and exhale. My mind feeling as if it's surfing the waves of the breath, being carried by the waves of the breath. And the rhythm of the breath, those waves, carrying me away from the shore of day-to-day thoughts, ordinary thoughts, carrying me inward to a very quiet place inside, where there's no thoughts about roles or responsibilities or any unresolved issues or even any activities. A very simple space inside where I am very aware, acutely aware of my own presence. I, the thinker. I, the being, the experiencer. Not even really aware of the body anymore. Just absorbed in the experience of that quiet, sacred space inside, where I am with my own self in such an essential way, such a pure way. It's me, the being, aware of the self. How much time do I take for moments like this to stop and become aware of the self in this pure way, appreciate the self. Within me are the most valuable resources on this planet. So valuable. We cannot determine a price for them. They're priceless. The most sought after resources. are within me, the being. Resources of peace, of lightness, of truth, dignity, everything of value, true value, imperishable value, can only be found within me, within the human soul. The moment I think of any of these qualities, the feeling of them blossoms inside my heart. Peace. And there's a wave of that cool, calm, light vibration. It is within me. It is my very being. And as I appreciate the self, I feel it elevates me into a completely different space, a very sacred space, a divine space, the feeling of entering God's world, a space dedicated to such deep reflection, to timeless thought, pure feelings, and remembering eternally, I belong to that one. I am deeply valued by that one. God exists in order to nurture the best in me. All sorts of things may be happening around me, but his focus is on the care of me, the soul, healing, restoring me, the soul. Remembering that makes me light, connected to what's most important. And it opens my heart. That sense of loving the self, being loved by God, makes me loving, motivated by love, creates so much energy in the self. The feeling I can do anything. I am lovable. I am loved. I am loving. When love flows, life becomes a beautiful, graceful flow. Om Shanti. We'll pause here and return to Angela, see if there's any questions or thoughts for you to share.
Thank you, Judi. And yes, a couple of questions. So one question is about, you mentioned self-respect and how important it is, how vital it is. And so I was remembering a quote that Daddy Janki, our previous head of our organization, said about self-respect. And she said, self-respect is according to the degree that I bring...
Might be very quiet out there.
Pardon? Is it too quiet?
But we're hoping that you are okay.
Can you hear okay, Judi?
And if there aren't any thoughts, again, they're most welcome if you have questions or thoughts. But if there aren't, I think it's really interesting to reflect on the situation in your own life at this time. What's going on in your own life? And really examine, when we have those moments when we're seated in a meditation room somewhere, or even now in a Zoom session, and we touch that peace, that deep contentment, that well-being, that stillness. There isn't any desires pulling the mind or concerns pulling the mind. When we touch that feeling, and then bring into your awareness maybe a situation. Oh, there are questions. Sorry, I couldn't. Oh, I'm sorry. My speaker turned off. Please go ahead, Angela. Go ahead.
I was enjoying that so much. I didn't like to interrupt.
No. Go ahead. I apologize. My speaker went to sleep.
No
It's sleepy. So.
Okay. So one question I was thinking was, our old head of our organization, Daddy Janki, she said about self-respect, as you were mentioning, is one of the vital qualities that we need. She said real self-respect is to do with the degree that I bring quality to my actions, and it has nothing whatsoever to do with any external achievements. Would you like to just enlarge on that a little bit?
Yeah, I believe 200%. It's actually why I came into Raj Yoga. Once I had arrived at the realization that without self-respect, really, I'm pooped. And it was really the main thing that Raj Yoga promised. It's incredible how much we become dependent on external validation. And doing is a huge one. I don't know if any of you are the type. I know I do, just to keep myself organized, and it's a good tool. But that, to-do list, and we check it off, and it's as if we just made an investment in our sense of personal worth. We rely so much on external validation, the activities, whatever tasks we're able to perform, however people think of us. So many of our systems are set up to reward and validate us this way and perpetuate this external validation, the system. And it creates incredible stress on the soul, more than we can know. And it goes quite deep and subtle. And what I love about this idea of cultivating self-respect, which I really define as valuing myself for all the right reasons. So if it's external validation, I'm valuing myself for all the wrong reasons. But true self-respect, valuing myself for all the right reasons, my own intrinsic worth. When I'm able to maintain the integrity of the self as I come into action, in other words, I'm not taking from the action. I'm not taking my value from the action. I am giving my value through the action. So it's not an outside in, it's an inside out. So it's not that I stop doing things. Very often, I remember when I came into the study, dance was a big part of it. And I'd heard of so many who come into the spiritual practice and they stop dancing or singing or playing instruments because they felt there was too much ego involved, this external validation. So they stopped. And I kept feeling, again, integration. But I thought, no, I don't think that's the answer. If ego doesn't get what it wants through dance, it will get it somewhere else. I need to just resolve this issue, this dynamic period. So I didn't stop dancing. I stopped defining myself as a dancer that is trying to take my sense of worth or identity. But I enjoy, as many of us do, it's a lot of fun to move. And I remember there was one day, the first time that we were doing a dance at the spiritual headquarters. It was myself and my physical sister, who is also a BK. And the dance started with our backs to the audience. I remember I was standing there and I could feel the usual ego just going crazy and I was shaking and nervous. There's thousands sitting there. The usual dynamic was kicking in, but a piece of me was determined to want to know what it feels like to do the thing I love without ego. I wanted to know what that felt like. I remember I turned around, and I can't say how healing it was to turn around, and there was just this ocean of smiling faces. There was no sense of audience performer. It was just this spiritual atmosphere, literally melted ego. There was no nervousness. It didn't even matter how badly I performed, if I forgot things. It was this sheer spiritual joy, the sense of being connected to the self and operating. So going from the inside out rather than taking my sense of value from the action. I don't know if that answered the question, Angela.
Yes, very nicely. Thank you, Judi. And we have another question, and then we have a comment. The question is how to let go of the feeling of regret of not taking some opportunity, because it weighs me down, always thinking how things could have been different if I would have taken that opportunity.
I think next to self-respect, forgiveness, which eroded the self-respect, forgiveness is critical to learning. So I am actually, it's like an obstacle race, and there's this obstacle and I just keep running into it rather than figuring out what needs to happen inside so I can learn and go over it. Situations definitely come. And I will tell you right now, each and every one of us does the best we can in any given moment, given the cards we're dealing with. There's a lot of internal pressure on the soul, ego being a huge one, fear, attachments, uncertainty, all of these almost cripple us. So we land up in this very conflicted space where a piece of us is saying, I want to do this, I want to do it. And another piece of us is like feeling incredible resistance and fear. And then the moment passes and we're like, oh, or else we do something else. And we're like, oh, and all we're left with is regret. We still have that opportunity to learn from it, what happened, but we need such a compassionate eye on the self to be able to learn what happened there, what was going on inside of me, what do I need to take care of or address, so when that situation comes again, it can be different. So really quick example, I was teaching a fitness class. There was someone in the class, and I've shared this story before, who was prone to epileptic seizures. And so I'm teaching the class and I suddenly look and yep, they're down in the back of the room having a seizure. And I did not do the thing I should do, which is connect to those three dots. I just went into this mode. And I go back and there was a nurse in the room, but responding to epileptic seizures is a little bit unusual when it comes to code. Some of you might know that. It is altered consciousness, which is usually 911, you call it, but epileptic seizures, they can choose to have it on file what the instruction is, and they did, and it was don't call an ambulance, do this, let me have the seizure, take care of it the best you can, get the class up and running. All of that was on file. I was not privy to that. I didn't have the file. So I'm trying to respond to this code. The nurse is feeding me. I can feel complete spiritual disoriented. I'm completely disconnected from myself. The thing ends. It's a complete disaster. And I'm just feeling, oh my gosh, that was horrible. That was a complete mess. And I'm feeling, oh, I should have done this. I should have done that. And it's like, okay, I would never want this to happen again. I don't want the person to have it, but let's say it did happen again. What did you learn? What did you need to do differently internally? What did you need to strengthen so that you can respond? Now, the irony is I went through that. And I thought, okay, if this ever happened again, I would not want to, but if it ever did, the thing I did not do was those 3 points. I wasn't in any way connected to myself. I wasn't in any way thinking about God. I wasn't in any way having that sense of love or, that power of love. None of that was present. If it ever happened again, that will be the first thing I do. Well, 1 week later to the day, that soul is down a seizure again. But because of doing that work, I was ready. I was ready. It was like night and day. So I almost feel that drama will cooperate. If I do my end of the deal and learn, and maybe forgiveness is what, self-forgiveness is what I need to learn, but learn. It's as if drama says, okay, let me give you another little quiz. And it's wonderful because now we can apply what we've learned. It's so important to have that compassionate eye for the self. So I don't regret. I use that opportunity in a beneficial way to learn.
Lovely. Thank you, Judi. And the last comment is one of the listeners saying, nice one. That was really awesome, Judi. Really connected with your insight and your energy. Very cool ride. Haha, emoji. Lol, you make it really on a level. Ravers, dancers, artists, musicians, proper dudette. So that was the comment.
Thank you. Very sweet. Thank you.
Yes. And I would like to thank you yourself, Judi, for a great talk this evening. Very enjoyable and informative. And also a big thank you to everybody that's joined us this evening, to each and every one. So thank you very much. And we also have coming up some more talks. We have next week, the talk is on understanding karma for a fuller, happier life. So that's on Saturday. And also just a quick reminder, we are on Facebook, so you can have a look at this talk a little later on if you'd like to do that. So we also have lunchtime meditations. We have online seminars, and we have monthly meditation for beginners. If you would like to have a look on that on our Facebook page. So thank you very much. And have a very good evening, everybody. Om Shanti.
Om Shanti. Take care.